today we're going to be looking at a New York Times opinion piece by a Mr. Roy Scranton called Climate Change is Not World War. Now, if you like what I do, please be sure to subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter and Minds. Now, let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to be looking at this opinion piece from the New York Times. Hadn't had a good old New York Times opinion piece breakdown in a couple of days, so we're going to do one. And I saw this one, and keep in mind, I saw this and I was like, you know what? I've been bashing on the New York Times pretty much every upload, or every upload that has been about them. So I saw this and I was like, you know what? I think it'd be good to just do one that it's like, I basically agree with it. So that was the intention, and we're going to go through it. I'm not going to read the entire opinion piece because the first 2/3-ish are basically a historical retelling of what mobilization was like. Need to, and of course this also lines up with her proposal in the Green New Deal. So we need to mobilize our national economy in such a way, or in an equivalent way as we did in the Second World War to defeat Imperial Japan and Nazi Germany. So, and that is what this opinion piece is about. So this guy's saying climate change is not a world war. So I saw it, I was like, all right, let's do it. And like I said, all of this is basically a historical retelling of what had happened, and it's accurate. I went through it a couple of times. There's nothing I can see that is incorrect from his retelling. I'm fairly knowledgeable, particularly for those of you who know me. I'm fairly knowledgeable on World War II history, and I see nothing that I would have any complaints about in his historical retelling of the mobilization of the United States economy. So then we get down to his modern day comparison, which begins right here. First, climate change is not a war. There is no clear enemy to mobilize against. Excellent point. You would think that would be fairly obvious. There's no way to say that there were many Americans at the time who hated the Japanese for the attack on Pearl Harbor, and I believe rightly so. But it's particularly Marines fighting in the Pacific Theater. It was a visceral. The Americans and Japanese had a very similar relationship as the Nazis and the Soviets. Just absolute hatred on both sides. You see things that written by Marines at the time that are genuinely shocking about their feelings about the Japanese, and vice versa, I should add. So, second, as opposed to World War II, when national mobilization meant a flood of government money, and British money, $400 billion in cash payouts from the Brits, basically lifted the U.S. out of the Great Depression. And let's see. Oh, that truly did lift all boats. Addressing climate change would have real economic losers. If we were to do it, 100%. Part of the Green New Deal is to tear down every building. That's not an exaggeration. Every building, and rebuild it so it can be climate sustainable. If you don't think that's going to have real economic losers, you're insane. Many major players, industry, tech, blah, 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 basically what I just said. Third, mobilization during World War II was a national mobilization against foreign enemies. What's required today is a global mobilization against an international economic system, carbon-fueled capitalism. Carbon-fueled capitalism. Okay. This is the first point that I strongly disagree with. Yeah, it's carbon-fueled because we don't know of anything else to do. And what I mean by that is, yes, there are alternative fuels, but there's nothing right now that could legitimately replace natural, or I should say, carbon-based fuel systems. I mean, that is what harnessing coal is what began the Industrial Revolution. And the second Industrial Revolution in the late 1890s to mid 1930s, I believe, close enough. The second one was from coal to oil. So you had agricultural labor to coal-based economies, then to oil-based economies, which is what we have now. So carbon-based capitalism, well, you could say the same thing about socialism about right now. Do socialist countries not use oil? All right. It took President FDR years of political groundwork and a foreign attack to get the United States into World War II. What kind of work? This actually is a really good point. Let me start that over. It took President FDR years of political groundwork and a foreign attack to get the United States into World War II. What kind of work over how many years would it take to unify and mobilize the entire industrialized world against itself? Excellent point. I have nothing to add to that. The demand for World War II change. Okay, so now he talks about how FDR had to make numerous concessions to various political groups, particularly politicians and big business, in order to get them all on the same team to mobilize the national economy. So he's saying, what would these two paragraphs, what compromises would modern day Democrats be willing to make? That's certainly an opinion question. I believe none. I don't think they would compromise at all, personally. Maybe they would. Maybe they would. I don't know what issues they would be willing to compromise on. So then we get down here. And I want to reemphasize, I had good intentions in this article. Nevertheless, so he spends this whole article saying how this is not a valid comparison. Please stop comparing these two things. And then in his last two paragraphs, or three rather, he just loses it. Nevertheless, total mobilization may be our only hope. So you spend the whole article saying, please stop comparing it, and then you say, well, we have to do it anyway. Total mobilization may be our only hope. Ecological collapse is happening all around us. We may be nearing or have already crossed the line where it becomes unstoppable. Well, don't you think that's something important to know? If it's already too late, what's the point? Seriously, what's the point if it's already too late? So don't you think we should know if what we're going to do would actually be effective? Whatever. Piecemeal, consensus-driven, incrementalist solutions are tantamount to global suicide. Piecemeal, consensus-driven, incrementalist solutions are tantamount to global suicide. Okay. According to a summary from last year, leading scientists on global climate trajectories, the changes needed to stabilize the Earth's climate require a fundamental reorientation and restructuring of national and international institutions. Okay. I'll give my thoughts on that in a second. Such a program would be another order of magnitude larger and more complex than America's military mobilization during World War II. The problem of climate change is bigger than the New Deal. It's bigger than the Great Depression. It's bigger than war. The problem of climate change is the problem of how and whether human beings can live together sustainably on the planet. What would total mobilization mean? Judging from what happened in World War II, it would mean social upheaval, violence, censorship. Judging from what happened in World War II, it would mean social upheaval, violence, censorship, curtailed freedoms, dubious compromises, and radical changes in American culture and politics, yet it might also mean the survival of human civilization. So, I mean, I can't ascribe this to anything other than fear-mongering. I think he's just trying to make people scared. I don't see what else it would be. And this last paragraph truly blew my mind. He says, look at all these bad things that could happen. We need to do it anyway. And especially for Americans, this right here, these two words, I'm washing my hands. I'm doing the Pontius Pilate. I'm washing my hands of this whole thing. You're going to tell me you're going to curtail freedoms for international climate change mobilization? Nah, I'm good. Leave me out of it. Leave me out of it. Fundamental reorientation. So, like I said, I really thought, I looked at this and I was like, I think this person makes a good point. If you think climate change is a serious issue, I don't. I'm not one of those hoaxers, the whatever, climate hoaxers. I think it's an issue. I don't think it's life or death. We'll be fine. That is my personal opinion. And I'll add, caveat, I'm not a scientist. I'm much more comfortable in World War II territory than in climate science. But I think it's fair to say we're not going to be dead in 12 years. And just because of that, I find these whole last three paragraphs to just, if you wanted to actually make change, you're going to have to compromise somewhere. You're just going to have to, which goes back to what I said earlier. I don't think that the climate activists are actually willing to do that. So what's the option? We either commit global suicide, as this person has said, or we do what they say. And you know what? For me, I'm saying neither. And it is bigger than war. Is climate change bigger than war? No, I don't think so. So here's, there was one thing that popped into my head when I was reading this article. The First World War. More human beings died in the First World War than in all previous human conflicts combined. And in the Second World War, more human beings died than in all previous human conflicts combined, including the First World War. So it's bigger. Climate change is bigger than war. This is very dubious right here. I just cannot believe that this is something that would be true. But all right. And that's where I'm going to leave it for today. Once again, I'm Mike, the American Analyst. I'm coming out with brand new videos every single day, so be sure to tune in. Follow me on Twitter and Minds, and subscribe to me right here on YouTube. And please be sure to hit that bell notification so you can get notifications every single time that I upload. Have a good evening. Thank you all for listening. This is Mike, the American Analyst. Follow me on Twitter, Minds, and subscribe to me on YouTube. And be sure to hit that bell notification. I'll be coming out with new videos every single day for your viewing enjoyment. Have a good one.